From the 59th floor of his Ikoyi penthouse, Adebayo, Bayo, Alade, looked down upon the bustling expanse of Lagos. The city, a relentless heartbeat of millions, was a world he ruled from above. At 35, he was the living embodiment of a man who had everything: a sharp, handsome face, a physique honed by private trainers, and a net worth that was a daily reported topic in financial publications. Yet, in his mind, he was more than just a man. He was a gatekeeper, a curator of a world built for the elite. The teeming life below was a distant, noisy blur, a backdrop for the grand opera of his existence. He truly believed there were two kinds of people: those who possessed wealth and those who desperately chased it. His friends, a carefully vetted circle of Lagos's most influential, understood this unwritten rule. The women they dated had to be of a certain class: daughters of CEOs, heiresses to legacies, socialites with impeccable family names and equally impressive trust funds. To date anyone else was not just a social gaffe, it was a betrayal of their entire identity. Tonight, his friend Chidi was the unfortunate subject of his disdain. They were on the phone, the digital sound cutting through the quiet hum of the penthouse's air conditioning. "She's an artist, Bayo," Chidi said, his voice laced with an uncomfortable defensiveness. "A painter. Her work is incredible." Bayo let out a short, dismissive laugh that held no humor. "An artist? Chidi, are you telling me she's another one of those creatives who thinks a paintbrush and a trust fund are interchangeable? Or is she just a hustler, trying to find a sugar daddy to fund her canvases?" "She's just a painter," Chidi admitted, a hint of frustration in his voice. "She works at a small gallery to make ends meet." "She's not like that, Bayo." "To make ends meet," Bayo repeated, the words tasting like something unsavory. He couldn't wrap his head around such a concept. It was a language spoken only by people who had to worry about bills, about rent, about the daily grind. "Chidi, you're an Alade. Your name opens doors. You're not supposed to be making ends meet for anyone, let alone dating a woman who does. They're all after the same thing, my friend, and you're too blind to see it. She's a good person, Bayo. She's honest, and she's not after anything." Bayo's laugh was sharp and cynical. "They're all after something, Chidi. The moment a woman who isn't drowning in her own money gets a whiff of ours, their eyes glaze over. It's a primal, instinctual hunger. They want the G-Wagon, the penthouse, the name. They want to be saved. Don't be so naive." He ended the call, his words a final, stinging judgment. His own experiences with women from his class, a series of failed relationships built on a foundation of shared ambition and zero passion, had hardened his beliefs. But at least the greed was refined, a desire for more power, more influence. The greed of the low life was just crude, a desperate grasp for a life they hadn't earned. He was convinced that a truly genuine, unselfish woman outside of his social sphere was a myth. A week later, Bayo was at a charity gala, a predictable affair of air kisses, polite conversation, and thinly veiled business negotiations. The room was a sea of shimmering fabrics and dazzling jewelry. His current companion, a stunning model named Ngozi, a brand in her own right, was draped on his arm. She spoke of her upcoming Fashion Week shows and her philanthropic work, all the right things to say. But her eyes, even when they met his, held a calculated emptiness. She saw him as a man who could fund her next venture, not as a person to connect with. He caught sight of Chidi across the room, his face lit up with a genuine smile as he spoke to his painter. The woman, whose name was Serena, wore a simple, elegant dress that looked like it had been bought from a boutique, not a Parisian atelier. But the look on her face as she listened to Chidi was one of pure admiration and joy. It was not the practiced, vacant smile of a socialite, it was real. A tiny, almost imperceptible crack formed in Bayo's carefully constructed worldview, but he immediately dismissed it. Naive, he thought again. Chidi is just too blind to see the long con she's running. Give her time, and she'll be picking out jewelry with his black card. He excused himself from Ngozi, citing a pressing call, and slipped out the back. He hailed a ride-share, a departure from his usual chauffeured car. The ordinariness of it all was a welcome change. "Where to, sir?" the driver, a friendly man with a kind face, asked. Bayo hesitated. "Just drive. Somewhere with good food. Not a five-star restaurant. Somewhere authentic." The driver smiled. "Ah, you mean a local spot? I know just the place. Best ewa agoyan in town, if you ask me." 20 minutes later, the car pulled up to a brightly lit, unassuming bistro. "This is it, sir. The Daily Spoon. Enjoy." Bayo stepped out, the cool Lagos night air a relief after the stuffy gala. The name of the restaurant was almost comically unpretentious. He took a deep breath, adjusted his suit jacket, and went inside. The Daily Spoon was a sensory explosion compared to his usual haunts. The air was thick with the scent of simmering spices, roasted peppers, and the rich aroma of local stews, not expensive perfume and champagne. The decor was simple, with warm, wooden tables and framed black and white photos of old Lagos. The noise was a comfortable hum of conversation, laughter, and the clatter of cutlery, a world away from the hushed, reverent tones of fine dining. He felt like a tourist in his own city. He was shown to a small table in the corner, feeling awkwardly out of place in his designer suit. A waiter approached his table, and that was when everything shifted. She was not a striking beauty in the way Ngozi was. Her beauty was subtle, a quiet radiance. She had a cascade of dark, curly hair tied back in a loose bun, and her eyes, a warm shade of hazel, seemed to hold a flicker of genuine kindness. Her face, devoid of heavy makeup, was alive with a natural vibrancy. She wore a simple black uniform with a small apron, but she carried herself with an understated grace that made her seem more elegant than any of the women at the gala. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice clear and melodic. "Can I get you something to drink?" Bayo's practiced smirk was frozen on his face. For a moment, he was speechless, completely taken aback. A glass of water," he managed to say, the words sounding foreign even to his own ears. He wanted to order an expensive wine, something to assert his status, but the thought felt childish and crude here. She smiled and nodded, turning to leave. As she walked away, he was captivated by the easy way she moved, the effortless balance of a woman used to hard work. His mind, so adept at calculating net worth, was now engrossed by the simple, graceful act of a woman walking across a room with a tray in her hand. Her name was Amara, he learned from her name tag. Throughout the evening, she became the only person he wanted to talk to. He asked for recommendations, not because he cared what he ate, but because he wanted to hear her voice. "The Ewa Agoyan is a classic, but the chef's special tonight is the pounded yam with a fang soup," she said, her eyes lighting up as she described the food. "It's incredible. The soup is made from scratch, and the chef pounds the yam fresh." He didn't even look at the menu. "I'll have that," he said. As he ate, he watched her. She handled a spill at a nearby table with calm efficiency. She laughed with a couple who were clearly regulars, and she spoke to the kitchen staff with a respect he rarely saw from people in his world. He found himself more engrossed in her world than in the multi-billion naira deal he was supposed to be finalizing on his phone. He had to test her. He had to prove to himself that she was no different from the rest. This was the only way he could justify his entire worldview. When he finished his meal, he asked for the check. As Amara walked away, he, accidentally, dropped a crisp, 2,000 naira note on the floor, letting it land under his chair. He watched from the corner of his eye as she walked past, cleaning a nearby table. She saw the note and stopped. He braced himself for the moment he knew was coming, the moment she would pocket the money with a furtive glance. It was an inevitability, a confirmation of his cynical belief. But that's not what she did. She bent down, picked up the note, and walked straight back to his table. "Sir, you dropped this," she said, placing the note gently on the table. "You must have a hole in your pocket." He was stunned. His carefully laid trap had failed. He stared at the note, then at her. "Keep it," he said, his voice unusually quiet. "It's a tip." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "That's very generous, thank you. But my tips are for my service, not for returning something you dropped." She left the money on the table and walked away. The audacity of it, the honesty, the absolute lack of desire for his money. He had never encountered anything like it. She had just handed him a sum of money and walked away as if it were a common occurrence. The foundations of his world, built on the assumption of universal greed, began to tremble. He left the restaurant that night, the money still on the table, feeling a strange mixture of frustration and exhilaration. He had been proven wrong, but the feeling was good. It was a new and terrifying feeling, the feeling of being wrong about something so fundamental to his existence. Bayo returned to the Daily Spoon the next night, and the night after that. He told himself it was for the food, but he knew it was for Amara. He took the same table in the corner and watched her work. She came to his table with a look of surprise on her face. "Back so soon?" she asked, a playful glint in her eyes. "I hope the afang wasn't that good." He found himself smiling, a genuine smile that he hadn't used in years. "It was good," he said. "But I wanted to see you again." The words came out before he could stop them, and he was immediately mortified. He, Adebayo Alade, a man who spoke in corporate jargon and sharp commands, had just confessed to a waiter that he was there for her. She, however, didn't seem fazed. She simply placed a menu on the table. "Well, I'm here. You can ask me about the specials all you want." Over the next few weeks, Bayo made the Daily Spoon his nightly ritual. He learned about her life in fragments. She was saving up for design school. She helped her mother with the bills. She had a fierce love for classic Nollywood movies and old Afrobeat. She was funny, sharp, and had a quick wit that made him laugh out loud for the first time in memory. He tried to help her with her design school fees, a simple offer that he assumed she would accept with gratitude. "That's the kind of you, Bayo," she said, using his first name with an ease that no one else dared to. "But I have to do this myself. The debt might be high, but the accomplishment will be mine." He was floored. He had never met anyone who refused his help, especially when it was offered so freely and with no strings attached. He realized that for her, the struggle was not a sign of failure, but a part of the journey. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was building her own life, brick by brick. His conversations with Amara slowly began to change him. He started seeing the world through a different lens. He noticed the kindness of the street vendors, the hard work of the security guards at his office, the simple joys of people living their lives without the burden of his wealth. The swarm he once saw as faceless masses now had individual faces, stories, and dreams. He was no longer a king on a throne, but a man walking in a Lagos park with a woman who had a profound sense of purpose. The inevitable confrontation came one night. Bayo was at the Daily Spoon when a group of his business associates, led by his old sycophant friend Richard, came in for a casual dinner. Bayo was so engrossed in conversation with Amara that he didn't even see them at first. "Bayo, is that you?" Richard's condescending voice cut through the air. Richard looked at Amara, then at Bayo, his expression a mixture of confusion and disgust. "What are you doing here?" Richard asked, his eyes lingering on Amara's uniform. And with this, the word, this, hit Bayo like a punch to the gut. The casual cruelty, the dismissal of a human being as an object, was everything he used to be. A surge of anger, hot and righteous, filled him. "Her name is Amara," Bayo said, standing up, his voice dangerously low. And she is a person, Richard. Not this. Richard, taken aback, tried to laugh it off. Right, of course, just a little slumming, Bayo. Trying out the commoner experience. Before Bayo could respond, Amara stepped forward, her face a mask of calm dignity. I'll be right back with your drinks, sir, she said to Richard, completely ignoring his insult. She turned and walked away, her head held high. Bayo followed her to the kitchen, his heart pounding. Amara, I am so sorry, he said. He's a fool, an utter fool. She turned to him, her eyes no longer soft but filled with a quiet fire. You know, Bayo, he reminds me of someone, she said, her voice a low whisper. He reminds me of the man who mocked his friend for dating a painter. He reminds me of the man who believed all women who work for a living were after money. He reminds me of you. The words hit him like a physical blow. She knew. She had heard his conversation with Chidi. She had heard everything. He stared at her, a wave of shame washing over him. The arrogance, the casual cruelty, the deep-seated prejudice, it was all laid bare. He saw himself for the first time, not as a titan, but as a petty, small-minded man. I am sorry, he said again, the words feeling utterly inadequate. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, she said, a hint of tears in her eyes. Just think about it, and don't ever let someone talk to another human being like that again. She walked away, leaving him standing alone in the sterile, brightly lit kitchen, his past sins laid out before him like a series of embarrassing exhibits. He left the restaurant without a word to Richard and his associates. He walked the streets of Lagos for hours, his mind a whirlwind of self-recrimination. He called Chidi. Chidi, he said, his voice hesitant. I owe you an apology. And your girlfriend. I was an idiot. A complete fool. There was a long pause on the other end. Bayo, are you okay? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I met someone, and he trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of her impact. She made me see a lot of things. About myself, and about people. She's an artist too, Chidi asked, a playful tone in his voice. She's a waiter, Bayo said, a smile breaking through. And she's the most incredible person I've ever met. He went back to the Daily Spoon that evening, but he didn't go in. He waited for her to get off her shift. She saw him standing outside, leaning against his car, looking more lost than he had ever looked in his life. She approached him, her expression unreadable. Amara, he said, his voice raw with emotion. I want to apologize for everything I've ever thought, for everything I've ever said. I was wrong. So arrogant and so wrong. I was so caught up in my own world that I never saw the beauty and the dignity and the hard work of people like you. She listened, her expression softening. I know, she said quietly. I knew who you were from the first night. I saw the look in your eyes, the way you held yourself. You were so far removed from everyone else. I was a coward, he said, the admission a great weight lifted from his shoulders. I was afraid of people who didn't play by my rules. I was afraid of people who didn't want my money. I was afraid of people who were genuinely good. She took his hand, and the simple touch sent a shockwave through him. It was a gesture of forgiveness, a sign of hope. You're not that person anymore, she said. You're trying, and that's all that matters. His life changed, not with a bang, but with a slow, steady hum. He stopped going to the galas, the parties, the endless dinners with people he didn't care about. He spent his evenings at the Daily Spoon, not as a customer, but as a companion, helping Amara close up the restaurant, listening to her talk about her day, her dreams, and her fears. He learned to appreciate the simple things, the taste of a perfectly cooked homemade meal, the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hand in his as they walked through the streets. He learned that happiness was not about having more, but about finding joy in the small, everyday moments. He saw his work differently, too. He began to see his employees not as cogs in a machine, but as people with their own lives, their own struggles, their own dreams. He started a program to help his lowest-paid employees get an education, a scholarship fund for their children. He was still Adebayo Alade, the billionaire, but he was a different kind of billionaire, a man with a conscience, a man with a heart. One evening, he was with Amara at her small apartment. It was a cozy, brightly decorated space filled with books and art supplies. He was helping her with her design portfolio, and she was showing him her sketches, a world of creativity and imagination that he never knew existed. "I still don't understand how you're so good," he said, looking at a beautiful drawing of a dress. "How can you be so honest, so kind, when the world can be so cruel?" She smiled, a knowing, gentle smile. "The world is what you make it, Bayo," she said. "It's easy to be kind when you're surrounded by kindness. But true kindness, true goodness, comes from within. It comes from choosing to be that person, even when it's hard." He realized then that she hadn't just changed his perception of people. She had changed him. She had shown him that the world he had built, a world of wealth and power and arrogance, was a cold, lonely place. She had opened his eyes to a world of warmth, kindness, and genuine connection. He wasn't a king anymore. He was just a man who had fallen in love with a beautiful, honest waiter. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly, completely, and unapologetically alive. His old friends, the ones who once admired his unwavering arrogance, were now baffled. Richard and his ilk avoided him, unable to reconcile the old Bayo with this new, softer version. But Chidi, his old friend, was different. "She's something else, isn't she?" Chidi said one afternoon, as they sat on a park bench, sipping coffee from a paper cup. This was a new habit of theirs, a stark contrast to their previous business lunches. "She is," Bayo agreed, a smile on his face. "She made me realize that my entire life was a performance. I was so busy playing the role of the rich, cynical billionaire that I forgot to be a person." Chidi laughed. "I tried to tell you. But you had to see it for yourself." "I did," Bayo said, looking at the people walking by. He saw a young couple holding hands, a mother playing with her child, an old man reading a newspaper. They were all people, with their own lives and their own stories. He no longer felt a sense of superiority, but a sense of shared humanity. One rainy afternoon, Bayo was on his way to meet Amara for lunch when his car was stopped in traffic. He was on a street he would normally never be on, a street lined with small shops and a bustling market. He saw a young woman on the corner, shivering, her clothes soaked from the rain. She was trying to flag down a car, but no one was stopping. He hesitated for a moment. The old Bayo would have ignored her, seeing her as another problem he didn't need to solve. But the new Bayo, the man who had seen the world through Amara's eyes, felt a pang of empathy. He pulled over, rolled down the window, and waved her over. She looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. She got in the car, and he turned on the heater, wrapping a blanket from the back seat around her shoulders. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Just to the next bus stop," she said, her voice small. "I can't get a cab." He drove her to the bus stop, but he didn't just drop her off. He waited with her until the bus came, making small talk, learning her name and where she was going. He was no longer Adebayo Alade, the billionaire, but just a man helping another person out of a difficult situation. When he finally met Amara for lunch, she looked at him, her eyes full of concern. "You're late," she said. "What happened?" He told her the story, expecting her to be proud of him. But her response was something he didn't expect. She just smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "That's who you are, Bayo," she said, taking his hand across the table. "That's who you always were." You were just too afraid to show it. He realized then that his transformation wasn't a magical, overnight event. It was a slow, steady unveiling of the man he was always meant to be. The arrogance, the cynicism, the prejudice, it was a mask he had worn for so long that he had forgotten who he was underneath. Amara hadn't changed him. She had just given him the courage to be himself. Months turned into a year, and their relationship flourished. They were a study in contrasts, the billionaire and the waiter, but their love was a testament to the fact that people are more than their social status. Their love was built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and a deep understanding of each other's hearts. Bayo sold his penthouse and moved into a beautiful, yet modest, house in a quiet neighborhood. He still worked, but he was no longer driven by the desire for more power or more money. He was driven by a new purpose, to use his wealth for good, to help the people he had once looked down upon. One evening, he took Amara to the park where they had their first long conversation. The moon was full, the air was crisp, and the stars were scattered across the sky like diamonds. He took her hand, his heart pounding in his chest. "Amara," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you came into my life and you changed everything. You didn't just show me a new way to live. You showed me a new way to be a person. You showed me that dignity and kindness and a good heart are worth more than all the money in the world." He got down on one knee, a simple, heartfelt gesture that meant more than any grand display of wealth. He took out a small box, not with a diamond the size of a pigeon's egg, but with a beautiful, simple ring that he had chosen for her, a ring that was as elegant and understated as she was. "I don't have a mansion to offer you anymore," he said, a gentle laugh in his voice. "I don't have a life of endless parties and galas. I don't have a world of gold diggers and social climbers. All I have is a simple life, a good heart, and a man who loves you more than anything in the world. Will you marry me, Amara? Will you build this new life with me?" She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "You already have, Bayo," she said, her voice a sob of pure joy. "You already have. Yes, 1,000 times, yes." They kissed under the moonlight, two people from different worlds, united by a love that had defied all odds. He was no longer the arrogant, lonely billionaire. He was just a man who had found his happiness, his purpose, and his home, in the eyes of a beautiful, honest waiter.